Where's Mike?
Mike's, he takes vacations, I guess.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
He's,
He deserves it. He's a hard-working guy.
Trying to get a tan, which I could never do, but whatever, that's fine. All right, so some serious issues I want to discuss with you, but also just some back and forth. But first, I'm just going to say this documented proof of citizenship thing. There's discussion at the federal level of how elections should be carried out at the local level. Arizona's been through this before about showing IDs at the polls. Let's talk big picture here. The direction of, at the federal level, Trump administration wanting to have certain proof of citizenship in voting. There are a lot of people who feel like this is disenfranchisement, potentially. What are your thoughts generally, as a Secretary of State?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to recognize the data, the actual facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground are that it is vanishingly rare that an ineligible voter will cast a ballot. Now, does it happen? Yes. But it is, again, vanishingly rare. Why? Because we've got great systems already. And I'm the kind of guy who feels like your fundamental right as a citizen belongs to you. It doesn't belong to the government to take away. It belongs to you. Now, that having been said, there are some folks out there who just don't trust anybody. They don't trust the systems. They don't trust their fellow citizens. And they pound on the table and say, you have to prove that you are a citizen to vote. And so you have two, I think, differing sets of values. One set of values, my set, is it's your right, and it shouldn't be taken away without due process. That is a foundational principle that I own. The other side is it may very well be your right, but you've got to prove it to get it. Now, I know a lot of those folks probably don't feel that way about the Second Amendment. I feel that my fundamental right reflection is consistent, right? Yeah. You shouldn't have to prove anything to own a gun. You shouldn't have to really prove anything to vote. Now, that all having been said, when you get down to brass tacks, we're really letting a non-existent problem become a problem, and that's the narrative. The accusations are not real. Mm-hmm. The facts that are being alleged are not real. And yet we're asking folks across the country to move into a system that we in Arizona have been implementing for a long time. Not very well, by the way. We can get into all that. Yeah. But I think it's a tail wagging the dog at the national level. And it is, I think, the libertarian streak in me is not very happy about it.
Well, it's been going on for a while, though, this, whether we call it misinformation, disinformation, fear of someone who doesn't look like someone else, or maybe this
I'd call it something else, but the control room usually beeps me out when I say that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we've got a 7-second delay. I shouldn't have said that, maybe. But how do you counter that? Not just misinformation, disinformation, but this narrative that has taken hold, and this could be. You might have people who are in a community who it's never actually happened in their community. In their state, there may have been 2 cases of something that people were really concerned about, and yet it takes hold. So. Yeah. You've got a lot of other things going on, but how does someone in your position counteract that?
With the truth.
Okay.
With the truth. And you use the same burden that you'd use anywhere else, right? In America, the accuser has to bring proof, whether it's in a criminal trial or a civil trial, whether it's anywhere else. If you don't have proof, then we know you're full of it, right? And in this circumstance, the folks who are making allegations of lots of ineligible voters voting, they don't have any proof. It doesn't exist because that's not what's happening. And the robust and secure systems that we have been called to doubt on baseless, accusations. And it's unfortunate because what you're doing really is you're throwing a bunch of people under the bus who've been running these systems, Democrats and Republicans alike, across the entirety of this nation. And you're saying these guys are doing bad things and they're stealing elections and blah, blah, blah. And that's just not true. And I don't like the idea. And here's the analogy. Yeah. Let's say you work for a big company and you're running a big company and there's a particular process that's foundational to running that big company, right? And suddenly somebody in the company starts talking smack about that process without any, and they're saying, oh, this company is terrible because, this and that and the other. And the folks that are running this are all corrupt and all this kind of stuff. And they don't have any. Now, if you have facts, you're a whistleblower, you can be seen as a hero. Yeah. But if you don't have any facts, what are you? You're a loon, and you get canned. And we've got a lot of loons out there that are taking advantage of folks who just don't feel good about this, that, or the other, and it's damaging the entire country. And for the analogy, the entire company could lose reputation and lose business. And so when we think about the business analogy here, it doesn't make sense to make allegations without facts. Mm-hmm. Now, if there were facts out there, I would be the first one in line to say, show them to me. Let's fix this.
Yeah.
Like we did in September last fall when Stephen Richer said, hey, we've got this issue over here. And I'm like, whoa, hold the phone. And we started looking at it. And I took that public, very public right away, because we had an election coming up. And I wanted people to understand that even the not so good things we're going to talk about because we've got to fix them. And we're in the process of fixing them here in Arizona. But I don't think that anybody else in the country is really, A, equipped for this, or B, has really thought deeply about what this really means.
Well, I didn't mean to kiss your butt 5 minutes in an interview, but that's one of the things that I admire about you is that you have a spine and you also are not shy and you like getting out and talking about these things. And, you know, I think people have concerns about elected officials sometimes of what can I sweep under the rug so it doesn't come back and get me. And I think a lot of people respect that about you.
Well,
I mean, it's the job, but you're still doing it.
Look, anytime you sweep a fish head under the rug, it's going to start stinking. Eventually, someone's going to find it, and it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
The best thing to do is scoop it up and throw it away and clean up the mess right away.
Yeah.
Be done with it. This is, and maybe it's from my time in the Marine Corps, maybe it's from, I don't know, some other experiences that I've had in my life, but the notion that you can hide from a problem and it'll just go away, that's absolute insanity. It's not. You got to fix the problem, attack it, right, and keep charging forward into the challenges, and that's how you grow, right? Nothing worthwhile is easy, and it doesn't matter whether it's in your personal life, whether it's as to your health and fitness, whether it's as to your spiritual journey, whether it's as to your family. Change, positive change, requires discomfort. Right? Yeah. Fixing things means that you sometimes have to be uncomfortable. And a lot of people just want to be super comfortable all the time, which is a great aspiration. But you got to get there. You got to do the work. And sometimes you just got to, it's just easier to put it out there.
Final question before the break, though. We talk about this narrative. It may be some secretaries of state. I have no idea, probably not. But at the core level, it's the guy at the top right now, President Trump, who has benefited from some of this misinformation, some of this fear. Mm-hmm. He's got the biggest bullhorn there is. He's very popular, at least among some people, and he's very loud. So how do you can still counteract that with facts when you've got this guy who's just still throwing out things that aren't facts?
No, you've also got to have great candidates. Okay. And you've got to have great candidates that are connecting with people on an emotional level. I mean, look, politics is a popularity contest, and eggheads like me, mostly on my side of the aisle, I'll say, and all the consultants, they so want to carefully craft and package politicians that they lose their authenticity. Well, the voters aren't stupid. Yeah. They can smell that nonsense a million miles away, and that's why we've seen so many people just kind of manage themselves into oblivion and being incapable of leading. You know, I think we've got some examples in modern day politics, some very close examples, I should say.
Well, I won't name names. Look at someone like John Fetterman, though, who is probably the epitome of whatever he is himself, and that there are times where he goes outside the party and that makes people mad. Yeah,
but also, you know, is he effective? Like, look, you got to be the whole package, right? You got to be your authentic self, but you also can't just be a moron. You got to be able to think strategically, and you've got to be able to find good advisors who are going to tell you no,
right?
And then you have to be able to make those decisions. That is the system where the cream rises to the top, and eventually, if you're not effective, first of all, if you're not effective on the political trail, you can't get elected. B, if you're not effective in governance, you're not going to get reelected. And so, you know, this idea that our system naturally ferrets out some of the best, it's supposed to. Yeah. Then you have all of this other outside influence that is oversized, right? I think if we just paid more attention to the folks that are running and not so much attention to the outside money, the outside influence that pushes our opinions one way or another in sometimes ways that aren't really open for us to see. I think we should do a lot more debates, and I think we should really pay more attention to the people that are running, not the narratives that other people are setting up for them.
A couple more things I want to ask you about, but let's put a cap on the DPOC, Documented Proof of Citizenship. I know you had one more point you wanted to make.
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard from other secretaries around the country as they ask us here in Arizona, because we've been doing this for a long time, how do you verify that a birth certificate that somebody's giving you is real? How do you verify that the passport is real? How do you verify this stuff? And I just tell them we don't. Yeah. We don't have the manpower for that. We don't have the time or the energy for that sort of thing. And there's no support system for it. Am I supposed to call, every time someone moves here from Michigan or Indiana or Illinois or New York or Wyoming or somewhere? This is the demands are so high on a system that is so poorly supported. It doesn't make a ton of sense. On top of what I've already said, we don't have any proof that there's any that this issue is even really an issue. So I think there's pragmatic concerns in application that the ideologues are ignoring on purpose because they're trying to score political points. Well, somebody's got to do the work. And so those folks need to be included in this conversation.
When you mentioned support, it takes me back a few months ago. Last time I talked to you in a studio, I asked you about your expectations for the legislative session. You've got a lot of other things to do, but has the legislature given you any funding or anything, or do you think they're going to give any funding in the budget?
Well, they're still in the budget phase, and
taking a break right now.
I'm loath to comment too much because we've got a lot of work happening behind the scenes as they're on their 2-week hiatus, which isn't really a hiatus. They're working hard down there. Hopefully, talking with the governor's office, although I'm not too sure about that. But we're doing everything that we can to make our programs thrive. We did, however, have one major legislative victory that I'm not going to describe too much, and let me tell you why. I exist in a very political hot potato bubble, right? There's a lot of folks down at the legislature that just don't like me, and that's fine. I feel the same about some of them. Mostly I get along with a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. But we had some stuff that we really needed to get done, so we just got it done. And the governor signed a bill that we were very, very, very interested in. And we didn't celebrate it. We didn't do a bill signing. We just got the work done. And that, to me, is a much bigger victory than a lot of the little ones that people do all these celebratory, victory laps over. So when it comes to getting the work done, sometimes you just don't say anything about it. You don't mention what it is. You just get the work done.
That's a good point. It's disappointing sometimes that in some cases, maybe because there will be potential backlash, but I think you're right. To get the work done, people have to respect that. So hopefully they do.
Yeah. I mean, look, nobody likes getting dirty, but somebody's got to clean up the messes, right? And you go take a shower and you move on, and that's the way we're doing it. We're just getting the work done, and I'm really proud of my team, and I'm very grateful to the folks in the legislature of both parties who understood that this needed to happen, and they helped make it so.
Let's talk for a couple of minutes about election security writ large, because there were concerns in the past and evidence that was found that other countries, especially Russia, is trying to get in our elections, and other states, et cetera. So there's concern about funding on that level, too. There's concern about the Senate, U.S. Senate, and Congress taking this seriously enough. What are your concerns about that as Secretary of State?
Well, the Trump administration and Secretary Noem have opened the drawbridge to the bad guys. We lost all communication with CISA, the Critical Infrastructure Security Infrastructure Administration. I don't know what it stands for, but they do keep us safe. Well, they did, and we can't talk to them now. And there's no plan. I sent a letter, my strongly worded letters, right, to our congressional delegation, to the White House, to Secretary Noem herself. She's the only one responded, and her response was basically, "We've received your communication. Thank you." They don't have a plan that we can tell. They don't have any interest in actually protecting and defending our critical systems. But they're the first ones to yell and scream that there's some problem and there's something unsafe. And so the actions are not meeting the words. And that's where I call, the word that would get me beeped, right? I call that BS. Mm-hmm. You cannot pretend for a moment that the threats against our democracy from external forces, I'm not talking about internal, but external forces, are real. You cannot assume that China and Russia and North Korea and Iran do not want to mess with our systems. And if you do believe in a strong America and you do believe in strength and security, you have to defend and protect against it. You can't just drop your drawers and expect nothing to happen. Yeah. And we've done that. And we're doing everything we can, scrambling behind the scenes. Each state is doing their own thing because we don't have this unified space of information and technology and information and pulling together of folks. That pulling of resources is really important. So, we're still working with the National Guard here in Arizona, as we have been. They're very, very good at what they do, but they don't have that extra bump now. And I was on a panel recently with the secretaries from Pennsylvania, Republican Al Schmidt, and my cousin, the Secretary of State in Nevada, which is weird. That's another story. Cisco Aguilar, and we were all saying the same thing. It's a terrible, terrible shame that this administration has decided that we don't need to have safe and secure elections in their actions, regardless of what they're saying in words and on paper.
Yeah. So we got about 90 seconds left. You've decided to take the plunge again when those of us who love being in the political universe are thinking, what's Adrian going to run for next? Well, it turns out you're running for re-election. Well, that is a fun parlor game. You got to admit that. So what have you learned, not just from being in this office, but what did you learn the first time you ran? Because you ran against a guy in the Republican Party who's, not, let's just put it this way, wears a cowboy hat and doesn't really know what's going on. And you wiped the floor with him. But that was, many people will say, well, that was not a great candidate. What are you seeing? What challenges are you seeing with this upcoming campaign that may be different, maybe the same as the first time you ran for this office?
What I've learned is that there's a lot more that unites us than divides us, and that's not just a slogan. That's actually real. I was just at the Mesa Chamber of Commerce this morning talking to some of those folks, and we're like copacetic. We were all agreeing on a whole bunch of stuff. But it's implementation stuff, right? It's we all agree that we really have to have a robust conversation about water, right? We all agreed that it's a really important thing to celebrate the semi-quincentennial. America's turning 250 years old next year. I chair the state commission. It's a big deal for the Chamber of Commerce. We all agree on a whole bunch of stuff. And like Eisenhower said, if you work on those things that you agree on, you can't disagree as much because you don't have enough time. I know that there is political contention out there, and everybody's saying, oh, we're more divided than we ever have been. Let me be a bit of a contrarian. I think we're focusing on our differences more than we are focusing on what brings us together. We all want our families happy, healthy, safe, and nearby. Can we work on that stuff? And if we focus in on that and stop worrying about all of this, cartoon character nonsense, then I think we can actually get things done as a community, as a state, and as a nation. But we just have to have the discipline to focus.
Thanks for watching The Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.